We have Tom in England, pronouns are he, him, who has an argument that 100% disproves God. So we've got an atheist here who thinks they can 100% disprove God. And so, Tom, my first question is, which God?
It would disprove all gods if correct. I'm very nervous about it, though.
All gods. All gods don't even have the same characteristics. So what are the characteristics of all gods that you're going to debunk?
Well, this is interesting. You've taken it down the street. A theist god and a deist god. Any theist god, any deist god.
A theist god and a deist god are two completely different propositions. Theist gods interact. Theist gods interact with reality, and deist gods don't. So how are you going to disprove two sets of gods with different characteristics? This is why I asked why first, or to define it first.
Okay, sure. What I'm trying to do is prove the properties of all powerful, all knowledgeable, and free will at the same time. Being that at the same time.
Aha. That's not all gods. That's not all gods. There's no contradiction in someone
So basically, what you're saying is, for any God that is purported to be all-powerful, all-knowledgeable, it is incompatible with free will. Well, that's not true unless it also created this world and has options. Because if, in fact, there was a God that was all-powerful and all-knowledgeable, but it did not create this universe, or it did not create this universe with options, knowing what would happen in the future, then free will isn't relevant to that God.
Okay, so can we take away the property of, say, just all knowledgeable and all powerful and call that God?
Okay, how do you prove that there is no being? Now, by all powerful, normally among theologians, when they describe all powerful and all knowledgeable, or omnipotent and omniscient, they are not suggesting that God could create a burrito so hot that he couldn't eat it, or that God knows the unknowable. What they're saying is that God is maximally powerful and maximally knowledgeable, and they don't know what the limits of that are. Does your argument address that?
It just is a God that can do anything which is possible and can know anything which is possible, if that's what you mean by maximally powerful and maximally knowledgeable.
Yes. That can do anything that is possible, that is logically possible, can know anything that's logically possible. Cool. Just prove that God.
Okay, sure. Well, I'm very nervous about it. So, okay. So something which is all-knowing always knew it would create, say, a unique human called Adam A, because it can tell the future for all eternity. 2. However, that's all-knowing something. Yes. 2. However, that's all-knowing something.
You've already lost at the very first.
Really? Yeah. Say that. Okay.
So you're saying that a God that was all-knowing knew that it would create Adam A, essentially, is your first premise?
Yes.
Okay. How did you demonstrate that that was a knowable premise or knowable fact? Because a God that is all-knowing knows everything that is knowable, but you haven't demonstrated that knowing the future is knowable.
All right. So, I thought if he was knew everything which is possible and he's all-knowing, that he would be able to tell the future for all eternity.
You don't know that.
You're saying that right. So, okay. Okay. So you're saying the argument's wrong then because of this. I don't know that it can tell the future for all eternity. But then there's lots of things it couldn't do. I mean,
No. That doesn't mean you, just because you don't know whether or not it can do that, doesn't mean it can't. And from that, you cannot then conclude there's lots of things that it can't do. You don't know what it can't do. This is the problem.
But if we define it as something that can tell the future for all eternity, because it's all knowing, because then it wouldn't be all knowing, would it, if it couldn't tell the future?
It would be if we define all knowing as knowing everything that is knowable and the future isn't knowable. If it knows everything that's knowable and the future is unknowable, then not knowing the future isn't a defeater.
Okay, so this particular God wouldn't know the future, is what you're saying. If we roll that.
No, I did not say this particular God wouldn't know the future.
Right.
I said you have no way of demonstrating that a God that knows everything that's knowable would know everything about the future. No offense, no offense, Tom, but the fact that I've explained that same point 2 or 3 times, and it is a basic logical construction. Yeah, we don't need to keep going, because I'm not saying what is or isn't knowable. I'm saying, how do you demonstrate that absolute knowledge of the future is in fact in the set of things that is knowable?
Yeah, because
I don't know.
Open theists would disagree with you, right? I'm pretty sure their position.
Really?
Yeah, because I mean, I'm not like super familiar. I don't talk to a lot of open theists, but they're going to claim that, right, he's omniscient, but the future is going to be open, right? I don't know if they make the claim that he necessarily knows the future, but there can be some conception where somebody defines omniscience where they know all true current propositions or something like that. Because all your argument seems like predicate on like analytic notions of what you mean, but like presumably someone could just mean something else by the term. That's fine. If you're rendering an argument with this in mind, it would just be the fact that you've left out one other type of God that we could still conceive of that you would have to render a separate argument for. So even if your argument was successful, right, it's valid and the conclusion follows and the premises are sound, it seems like the thing that Matt's pointing out, you would have to give a separate argument for, because that would be one type of a God, right? And you're saying that your argument kind of takes them all out with one fail swoop, like you're.
Yes, I was attempting to do that. Yes, as I say, you seem to think certain that I've failed to do that.
I really wish we could do that.
I'm very disappointed. Yeah, I'm very disappointed. But okay, so it doesn't. It can't. Basically, what we're saying is that it can't tell the future.
No.
You could define it as it not being able to tell the future.
Wow. Go back and listen to the call again. Go back and listen to the call again if you need to. All I'm saying is, if you say a God who is all-knowing knows everything that is knowable, you need to stop right there and define what is the set of knowable things. And does knowing the future and having perfect knowledge of the future, is that a knowable thing? I don't know.
All right. But I just don't see what. Okay, so I'm just misunderstanding. I just don't see why, if it can know everything which is possible, why it couldn't tell the future if it were a God. But I'm not guessing it. Your point. Sorry about that.
Because maybe it's a God that allows us to have choices that it doesn't know about. Maybe there is enough quantum indeterminacy to make the future not perfectly predictable. Whatever the case is, and I don't know, if you're going to say there's a being that knows all of the knowable things, that doesn't do any good, because you're not that being, so you don't know what the set of knowable things is. The only thing that you know is knowable are the things that you can identify are in fact knowable.
Right. But can I get around that by saying, even if we just assume for the sake of discussion, because then I'd be assuming, wouldn't I? Right. Yeah, I can't see any way around that, actually. I think you're right, Matt. I don't want to state so certainly you're right, but it just didn't occur to me that could be could be a possibility.
Hop right back to the drawing board, and because we'd love it. I think Mike and I would both love it if we could disprove all gods with one little argument. It would make me feel like I've wasted the last 18 years of my life. But
let me put it this way, Tom, I've tried to construct arguments, like, because I love philosophy and stuff, so I like thinking about some of these concepts and then presenting them to friends. There's arguments that I think are successful, but they're only arguments that rule out certain types of gods. I'd have to keep formulating other types of God or arguments, and it doesn't take even a giant chunk of them out, right? I mean, because I don't know what stops somebody from just defining God a different way or removing the properties at which my argument, hinges on. So, and when Matt first had said that, it seemed like before we even got to the all-knowing thing, it seemed like you kind of funneled this God into a more like specific criterion when it's supposed to be like wide open, right? Which is the whole force of the conclusion.
Yeah. I got to move on. I got one more call I want to get to, Tom, but go back to the drawing board. And I hope you do.
Huge fan, Matt. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Bye.
cheers. Thank you. I hope you do find the one argument to end them all.
Yeah.
But
in the show,
man, that's difficult when there's different criteria, because there are people who believe that there's a God that is powerful enough and knowledgeable enough, but not necessarily omni. And so you can't, that wouldn't fit in there. Yeah. It's like saying, it's almost like suggesting that there's only one fallacy and every argument commits that same fallacy.
Yeah.
And it's like, no.
Yeah.
You have to do a little bit more with that.